Hello everyone, I hope this video entry finds you well. I received some guidance today that I think I needed reminding of. I always need little reminders, but more so I felt called to share this with you, that perhaps it would be a reminder, maybe not for you individually, but for the collective as a whole. And it was the message that plants have stories. Plants have been telling stories for as long as there have been plants on this earth. Stories about when to harvest them, how to cultivate them, how to watch the animals to know which ones were safe to eat and which ones weren't, when to use them for particular ailments, how they would help. Humans would observe the environment around them, and they would collect stories. And they would sometimes sit around the warmth of a fire or the hearth, and they would share the stories with their family. And sometimes the medicine practitioner of a village or a culture would teach their students, and that student would in turn become the elder and continue to share those stories. Often done verbally, but this knowledge would be passed down from generation to generation to generation. And in some cases, plants have been telling stories for longer than humans have been alive, at least this particular wave of humanity. Let me give you the example of horsetail. Ancestors of horsetail lived on this earth when dinosaurs walked here. And can you imagine the stories they have to tell? The indigenous people of the land that I now live on tell stories of the strawberry and how it was important to eat the leaves with the fruit, because with the sweetness, you must take the medicine of the leaves as well. But we've forgotten that story. We just eat the sweetness of the fruit and we no longer eat the leaves. And it was a fellow herbalist that reminded me of this a few years ago, that when I was freezing my strawberries, she saw that I cut the greens off and reminded me of the reason why they grew together. And that's a story. And that's a story that holds truth, that holds potentially thousands of years of understanding and knowledge. These were stories that were passed down because they worked, because people understood that if I ate this plant or I bruised this one, or if I brewed a tea with this one, that it would help with condition X, Y, and Z. And then a relative newcomer came onto the scene with their own stories. And let's, for simplicity's sake, just call this newcomer science. And it is new. This is something that was really important for me to remind you of and to share, that science is a baby in this realm of storytelling. It has maybe been around in terms of modern medicine for 150 years, which is new when you look at traditional uses of plants that have existed for thousands of years. And somehow, in a very short period of time, the stories of this newcomer were given the power to decide what was valid and true. And I'm not saying that the stories that science have are not valid and there isn't truth in them. Of course there is. But how did we give the power of plant stories away so easily? Why, when the newcomer labels it as pseudo this or quackery that, do we so easily accept and dismiss potentially centuries upon centuries of use? I see so many people say, well, they haven't done a study on that. And it's like, well, one, again, science is a baby. And two, there's often very little money to be made from doing studies on plant-based botanicals that you can walk out your front porch and get off your lawn. So I just want to remind you that plants are older than us. They are wiser than us. They have been here longer than we have. They live in the rhythms of the world. They grow, they evolve, they adapt to their environments. And they have tales to share with us. And I think there's room in this world for the stories of all tellers, of all wisdom keepers. And so let us not just sweep one group of stories aside for the sake of another. Let us read both stories. Let us listen to both stories. Let us continue to pass the medicine on to our children so they can pass it on to their children and their children's children, so that they're not lost, so that we remember to eat the whole strawberry, so that we remember when we look at horsetail that it lived on this earth in the time of giants. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that, and I wanted to share that with you because, again, the world is trying to divide us, trying to tell us that one set of stories holds truth and another set of stories doesn't. And I think it is up to us to decide which stories ring true. And so I always look here. I look here when I hear these stories. And if it rings true, then I will tell them to my son, who will hopefully, if he ever decides to have children, will tell him to his son or to his community members. So I thank you for listening to this story, and I hope it provides some perspective. Much love to everyone, and be well.